What's up everyone, hope all of you are doing great. My name is Louis and on this channel we talk all things real estate, stock market investing and personal finance. So if you've been following my journey the last couple of months, you know that I bought a flat to renovate and to rent it out. The space probably looks quite familiar to you if you watched my previous videos. Because of the charcoal and the grey color, you might have seen this look before, and this is actually a different flat that I renovated, but I decided to stick with the same look. I received a lot of good feedback about this renovation and a lot of people enjoyed watching the previous reno. So I decided to make another video but make it a bit different. So the topic of today's video is how to budget for a rental renovation. Before we jump into this topic, there's a few things that's very important to understand, and that is that this is just my opinion. This is not financial advice, or I am not in any way forcing you to do what I am doing. Hopefully you can take this information with a grain of salt and you can incorporate it in your own way. That is the best way to learn, to speak to people that has done what you are trying to do and take a bit of information from each and every one. Ultimately, you have to follow your own head and hopefully that works for you. Just remember that this is a rental renovation and not a flip, so there is a massive difference between the two. So with that out of the way, the first tip is very important, and this is to never ever accept the cheapest quote. Obviously, there's certain stuff that we can't do ourselves where we have to get a contractor or someone that does tiling or woodwork or whatever it might be. It's always best to consult a professional, and when we do that, we first have to ask them for a quotation. By accepting the cheapest quote, you might put yourself in a very stressful position because you get what you pay for. There might be an odd one or two people that really does a good job and has the lowest price, but chances are that they are cheap for a reason. With that said, I would advise you guys to get 3 to 4 quotations from someone that does that specific job and try to compare them as close as possible. I would generally go for someone that has the most competitive price, but definitely not the lowest. Never try to cut corners and accept the first quote that you get. Usually this is the result of someone that's in a hurry, and when people are in a hurry, usually they mess up. So that is the first tip. Let's jump to the second one. The second tip is to set a strict budget. Budgeting can be a tricky business on its own, whether it's for your personal finances, even for a vacation. But when it comes to renovations, you really need to be very strict. Budgeting for a renovation is important because you have to have the capital to pay for material as well as labor. Imagine you budgeted for a 50,000 Rand renovation and at the end you are going to spend 100,000 Rand. This seems far-fetched, but this is definitely a reality. My suggestion would be to make a complete list of all the material and all the labor that you need to complete your project. Obviously, we can't predict the prices and we don't know the cost of everything. So the best way to budget correctly is to set a budget and add 20% to that budget. So let's say you budgeted for a 50,000 Rand renovation. I would add at least 20%, and that would be a good budget. This means instead of budgeting for 50,000 Rand, you set aside 60,000 Rand, so you have that 10,000 Rand buffer, because there's always something that happens. With number 2 out of the way, let's jump to the third tip, and this ties in well with the previous one, and that is to expect the unexpected. This is such a big deal when it comes to renovations, and there's always something unexpected that pops up. Let's say you wanted to put in tiles. You get the material, you get the guy to do the labor, and when he starts doing his job, he notices that the floor is not level and you'll have to add more cement. This is just a very random example. Or let's say you didn't add something to your budget, like small things like light fixtures or door handles, and suddenly you notice the door handles or the light fixtures doesn't work. This means that you have to go and buy these items, and this will ultimately increase your budget. This is why it's very important to add the 20% to your budget, because this will just help to offset these unexpected problems. Number 4, and this is another important one, is to understand your renovation project. This might sound really obvious, but believe me, it's not. Let's say we buy a small flat like this. We have created an accurate budget, we received good quotations, but now suddenly we start to over-renovate. This is a problem because this specific flat has a market cap, and it means that the market value of the flat is set to a certain level. If we spend more than we budgeted for, this means that we are over-renovating. When we over-renovate, it won't necessarily include the value of the property more than it can, or the total amount of rent that you can ask for the flat. So it's important to understand your renovation project. To put this into perspective, what I am doing rental renovations. So I try to save as much as possible and not overspend on items that is unnecessary. This is usually luxury items and stuff that is much more expensive than they are supposed to be. A few quick tips that I use to set a budget for a renovation is I use 10% of the purchase value of the property for renovations. So let's say we purchased this property for 500,000 Rand, I would budget 50,000 Rand. Of course, then we would add our 20%, which equals 60,000 Rand. 10% of your purchase value is for basic renovations. As soon as we want to do better renovations, we can look at 15%, and as soon as we want to do luxurious renovations, we can go anything from 30 to 35%. Just to remind you guys, this will be completely different if we do a property flip. Property flip calculations can be very difficult to understand, and that is a very intricate process, and a lot of people handle this different. People use the 70% rule. This is basically where your after repair value, or the price that you will be selling your property for, you need to deduct 70% from that and deduct your profit and your closing cost. After that is deducted, that will be the amount you are willing to pay for the property. So let me give you an example. If we have a property and we think that the after repair value is 2 million Rand, 70% of that is 1.4 million, then we need to deduct our profit. Let's say we are aiming for 100,000 Rand profit and our closing cost is 100,000 Rand. That means that we need to pay 1.2 million Rand for a property that we can sell for 2 million Rand. Personally, I have never done a flip, so I might be wrong. If you feel that you know a different calculation, feel free to share it with us down in the comments. But with that said, property flips is a total different ballgame. Another tip that is very important is to set a strict deadline. Deadlines is very important because how can we achieve a goal without having a target? Setting a target or a deadline for your renovation project will help you to stay on course and focus on doing everything as good and as quick as possible without rushing anything. The deadline can be set in a few different ways and it all depends on the size of your project. Deadlines can be different for different type of projects. Something like this can be renovated within a week or two. A big house can be renovated within a month depending on the size of your team. So it's important to just take this into consideration before starting to renovate. The last tip, and this is something that I love doing, is, let me quickly show you. And that is to write stuff down. I can be a very forgetful person, so using a book like this helped me out a lot. This just gave me the opportunity to write down certain things to buy at a certain time. I can show you guys, this is basically what I've been doing, and it just helps to remember basic stuff. I literally wrote here fix tap, buy plumbing tape, buy brushes for painter, and it's basic stuff, but imagine going to a hardware store and buying all of the material that you think you need, and when you go back to your site you suddenly remember that you forgot a few things. This costs us time and money. We really need to avoid this because this can ultimately postpone our deadlines. With that said, guys, this is a few tips. This is by no means all tips that I can share with you guys, but to keep the video short, I hope this helped you. If there's something that you want to add, please feel free to add it in the comments. This can help other viewers as well if they have the same question. So feel free to let us know about any other tips if you have done a project similar to this. With that said, guys, I'll see you in the next video.